Hello, everybody. We are
Hello there out
live.
there. Yes.
We're ready to do this. I see Rez and Rural Farm Boy already in there. How are you guys
All
doing
right.
today?
Good afternoon, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Indeed, indeed. All right, I can turn this music off.
It was getting me a little pumped up there. I was like, all right, I'm ready to go with this music.
Yeah, you know, I kind of dig that pretzel rock stuff. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good, and it doesn't get us kicked off Facebook anymore, so that's even better.
Yeah, that's always a good aspect of it.
How are we doing today, RFB? I see you've been at home for a few days now. All right. Get my audio cue ready here for the intro. Oh man, it's been raining here today too. We've had a few thunderstorms today.
Yeah, there was a heck of a storm this morning
Yeah, I slept through
up
most of
around
that
here.
one, but it woke me up a little bit, and then there was
Yeah.
another little thunderstorm around lunchtime. Ugh. Okay. All right, I think I'm about ready to get going. All right, I'll hit the button whenever you are. Actually, you know what? It would help if I start recording. I started this and didn't hit the record button. That would have been bad. We are in Western PA, Rez. We're about an hour north of Pittsburgh. All right. I think I am ready when you are.
All right, ready to go.
Cool. All right. I'm going to hit the intro, and off we go.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 22 of the From a Certain Point of View podcast. And Adam, my favorite number happens to be 22, so I'm excited about this episode.
Oh, it's a good one to be excited about. I think we got some fun
Yes,
stuff to talk about. I've been working on this one for a few days, and I'm pretty excited.
me too. So, how are you doing this afternoon, sir?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. I am getting a little bored,
Yeah, it's getting a little weird.
but I've been very glad for online entertainment podcasts and
Hmm.
live streams and Disney Plus and all this other stuff. Um,
Yeah.
Keeping me busy, keeping me connected to the outside world. It's been a lot of fun. So, and big thank you to we are live today on YouTube and Facebook, and a big thank you to those that are hanging out in the chat today. So far, we've got Mr. Rez and Rural Farm Boy. So that's awesome, and just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone that's been connecting with us and kind of keeping us in touch. And I was chatting with someone else from the book club this morning, and just we it's turning into a little bit of a family here, so it's nice.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, yeah. Thank you guys that are out there supporting us and communicating with us and listening to the show. We it means the world to us. And Adam, I'm thankful for that, and I'm also thankful for Star Wars during this time. I think
yeah,
Star Wars can help people get through some tough times, and this is one of those times. And we're lucky enough to have the Rise of Skywalker that recently came out, and Clone Wars going on, and still some Star Wars news going on. So it helps get through some of this isolation.
indeed. So what have you been up to this week? Now that you mentioned
Well,
Star Wars.
yeah. So yesterday I actually watched The Force Awakens
Mm.
because I'm anticipating my physical copy of The Rise of Skywalker to arrive in the mail within the next few days. And so I wanted to kind of go watch the sequel trilogy again. Um, and it just reminded me of how much I love that movie, and how it's almost, in my opinion, almost a perfect Star Wars movie. I
I
think
love Force Awakens.
it's great.
Yeah,
It's so good. Um, and just the way it just sets everything up, and it just feels so
indeed.
Star Wars, and um, I really enjoyed it and watching that. And then I've been reading the novelization still for The Rise of Skywalker, and yeah, watched the Clone Wars last night, that we'll talk about today. And
Okay.
yeah, that's pretty much been my week in Star Wars. How about you?
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I've been. It's kind of been a busy Star Wars week for me this week. So I watched Clone Wars like you mentioned, and I watched it a second time this morning. Rewatched the Skywalker Legacy documentary, which we'll talk
Oh
about
yes, I
later. And
I
yeah,
did that too. I forgot about that. I rewatched that. Yeah.
yeah. So I watched that. I started not watching. I started reading the Poe Dameron comic series. Started at issue one
Hmm.
since I've never actually really read that one yet. And just because I've heard some conversation around his role in episode 9 with the spice running stuff, so I kind of wanted to get my own perspective on that. So started that series a few days ago, and then last night on Nintendo Switch, I picked up, and this one has been out for a little bit, but it was Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast.
Hmm.
Uh, it's I can't recommend it on Switch. It's not been fun. it's it's rough. And that game has always
Because of the
been
graphics,
no,
or
no. I mean, I can deal with the graphics. It's the way it controls. It's very
mm,
weird, and I've tried it
hmm,
because Switch has the motion control, so I've tried it with motion controls and without motion controls, and it's just rough. I
it's
can't.
rough. I'm sorry to hear that.
I mean, I have it on PC, and I just kind of wanted to have it mobile. But
Hmm.
so I'll go back to playing it on PC. So
Yeah,
yeah,
gotcha. So, do you want to talk about our poll results next?
yeah, go for it. Jump in.
All right. So our weekly poll, which was kind of based off of the conversation you had with the Galactic podcast, and
Hmm.
how did you feel about Ray taking on the Skywalker name? That was our poll question this week, and um, here were our results. 61% of the voters out there felt that it was perfect. 25% said they preferred just Ray, and 14% said they felt it diminished her character. So I'm with the 61% that feels that it was perfect. I mean, from the first time I saw the movie, I just felt like, yeah, this is just perfect. Her taking on the Skywalker name, and having that close relationship with both Luke and Leia, and wanting to kind of shed her Palpatine lineage, and the family you choose, being that theme. So,
Hmm.
that's how I felt about it. What about you, Adam?
I actually didn't vote in this one, and this is kind of what I mentioned on the podcast last week. But I love it first of all. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that and I mentioned this last week. This is a character that's been looking for that type of belonging, that type of family setting, and so I think that her choosing that is a very strong theme. But then also on Persona, when she says she's just Ray,
Mm-hmm.
that also speaks to me every
Yeah.
time I hear it. So um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have strong feelings either way on this, and I know that's kind of a cop out answer, but uh,
Right.
I, I love how both of those scenes were done. So it
Mm-hmm.
was a little too hard for me to pick on that one, but
Yeah, I think actually my wife had a similar struggle with this poll, because she was like, "Well, I kind of wanted an option where it was just like, I was okay with it, you know." So I think I
yeah,
should have had
yeah,
another option in there for if you were just kind of okay with it, or
yeah,
um, sort of indifferent.
yeah.
But yeah, so those are the results.
Cool, cool, cool.
So what do we have going on this week's show?
We got some news to talk about this week, so we're gonna kick that off next. But we've got some things about Luke, and we've got a little bit more about Rosario Dawson that we want to talk about. We covered that last week, but we want to talk a little bit more about that. Some stuff about Rise of Skywalker coming up again, and let's see here, casting Andor, and also the casting Andor series, and then also I mentioned the Jedi Outcast game, but there's some other gaming stuff that happened in Star Wars this week, so we're going to talk about that. Clone Wars episode Six. Are we on six?
Yeah,
Yeah.
6. Yeah, we're
Okay, six. Okay.
halfway through.
Blanked on that for a bit. So
Hmm.
we're gonna talk about that. That's Deal No Deal, the episode title, and then we're gonna give kind of back. We're gonna go back and forth. We're gonna give our top 10 moments of the Skywalker Legacy. Uh, we're gonna give our top 10 moments of the Skywalker Legacy documentary. There we go.
There it is. You got
Got
it
it.
out.
Got it. Got it.
Hmm.
All right. You ready to jump into news?
Let's do it.
Well, you want the bad news or the really bad news?
Okay, so our first news article this week comes from IGN, and it's about Luke's missing lightsaber. And so, watching The Force Awakens yesterday, I was
Mm-hmm.
reminded of that plot thread that never really got resolved in the movies. It was one of those questions that I
Mm.
really wanted an answer to, that we didn't really get, and that is, how did Maz Kanata get Luke's lightsaber?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're getting towards that answer in the comic series. And this is the Star Wars
Yeah, this is the
new
Star
Star Wars
Wars
run,
main line. Yeah.
that takes place between Empire and Return of the Jedi, and we
Yep.
have and kind of like it's dumped into like the trash on Cloud City basically, and picked up by an
Mm-hmm.
Ugnaught.
Yeah.
Um, and so we're sort of, maybe this is going to be revealing, how that lightsaber got into Maz's hands. So, do you have any thoughts or feelings on this? Have you read this one, Adam?
I read it last night just because I saw that this was on the docket for today, and I hadn't read number
Hmm.
4 yet. So I picked it up. I have been reading these as they come out, but I've kind of fell asleep on number 4 a little bit. So I did catch up on that last night, and yeah. So if I mean the episode issue 4 has been out for a while, so I mean there are some spoilers here, and if you haven't read it yet, then you know be careful. But I mean this has been out for a few weeks now, so
Hmm.
um thoughts on it. I was very interested, and I know we're going to talk about this robed hooded figure that apparently has something to do with his lightsaber, because
Hmm.
in issue 3 it looked like this figure caught this lightsaber, but then in issue 4 it's this it fell and it's in this junk pile, so I guess
Hmm.
they didn't catch it. Maybe that was a vision of some sort. So it's interesting. I'm definitely interested to see who that character is for sure. So
Yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes, and hopefully, we find out how it got to Maz Kanata eventually.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that IGN
the
article mentions a couple possibilities, and they throw out the Ahsoka Tano idea, and they throw out the Shock
Hmm.
T idea. In Legends, Shock T survived Order 66, so I wonder if they're
Right,
starting
that
to
could be.
do that.
Hmm.
And then and I haven't read the Darth Vader series the whole way through yet, but Verla is another one that they throw out, who was a Padawan that survived Order 66.
Yeah, I saw that name. I wasn't, familiar with that one because I haven't read all of the Darth Vader comic.
Right.
But yeah,
So, yeah, general thoughts are I'm interested in seeing where that goes for sure.
yeah. So we'll see where it goes from here. Next up, we had an article from Star Wars Newsnet, and there was an interview that Greg Grunberg had with the Hollywood Reporter. And we know Greg is a good friend of J.J. Abrams, and
Right.
he played Snap Wexley in The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
And there was all this talk about there being a J.J. cut of the film, which, Adam, you and I never really bought that rumor that was
No.
out there. We never really bought into that. And I think Greg just kind of clarifies a little bit, and I think what he says here is he never understood that. He talked to JJ as friends throughout the process. Every night he'd be like, "How's it going?" And every time JJ was very positive about it. Um, I don't think there's any truth to it, he says, and I'd be surprised if there's a JJ cut. Every movie goes through a series of cuts. It's just the nature of it, and he doesn't buy into it at all. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, I think Greg would probably know if there was a JJ cut, given how close they are, and him working on the film and everything. but I didn't know if you had
Yeah,
any thoughts about this
Greg.
one.
Greg has always come across to me, and I'm not buddies with Greg or anything like that, but he's always come across as kind of a genuine guy. You know,
Hmm.
um, someone who would, like you said, who would know if there was some sort of strife there, and he talked about that not rivalry, but between JJ and Ryan Johnson, and so
Yeah,
he
he
didn't
also
think
talked
that
about
that
that. Yeah.
existed either. So I mean, I think that
Right.
he would kind of know, and he seems enough of a straight shooter that he would maybe find a way to say that if he wanted to.
Uh huh.
But I have to take him at face value, I guess. I mean, like I said, he seems like that kind of guy that would shoot straight, I guess. So
Yeah, I would agree. So I really don't think there's a JJ cut out there. And
nah, I don't.
again, I think the movie went through the normal editing process and cutting out the unnecessary fat, so to speak, of the movie, and getting it to a pace that they felt was right,
Yeah.
and keeping it at the length that a Star Wars movie
Now
typically
there
is.
are deleted scenes out there, and I want those
Yeah.
someday.
Yes,
And
and Adam, I was thinking about that, and I was trying to remember about the Force Awakens deleted scenes and whether they
I
were on the
was,
original release of the
yeah.
Blu-ray or if we had
I
to. I
don't.
think we had to wait for
I
those.
think they had to wait for those two.
I think there was a special kind of edition
Hmm.
sort of thing of the Force Awakens that came out maybe later that had deleted scenes on it. Now I could be wrong about that.
Yeah,
If
I have
we
the
if we have a
Blu-ray
fact checker
behind me,
out
but
there, but yeah, um,
I don't
I
think.
feel like we had to wait a little bit for those,
I,
so we might get
I
them
think you're right.
eventually. Yeah. So next up, we spoke, as Adam said last week, about Rosario Dawson
Yeah.
possibly being cast as Ahsoka Tano in The Mandalorian, and we have another article that says Deadline has confirmed Slash Films report that Rosario Dawson will indeed be playing Ahsoka in season 2, and it kind of goes on to mention, and this is why I wanted to talk about this again, Adam, the possibility of Ahsoka getting her own spinoff series, because I think was it the earnings call that Bob Iger was on where he mentioned we could get some spinoff series of characters that show up in The Mandalorian
Yeah.
season 2.
Yeah. I was on the
So
earnings call. Yeah.
I think this would make a lot of sense,
Hmm.
especially because Dave Filoni's involved. He is so beholden to that character.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it could be Dave Filoni's opportunity to be the showrunner or the creator of an Ahsoka spinoff series, and that could be one of those characters Bob Iger was talking about. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Um. And I'm not sure that this is the only place that reported this either. So it sounds like maybe this is being treated as like a soft pilot for Ahsoka, live
Hmm.
action going forward. And I gotta be honest, and especially with some of these shutdowns and delays with the coronavirus, I have to wonder if maybe the casting Andor series might be in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah.
It it's never seemed like a huge focus,
Right.
and I just kind of wonder if maybe if this takes off, I wonder if that might um get into a little bit
Yeah.
more trouble, I guess. So
Right. I could see that, and I'm glad you actually brought up the Cassian Andor series because that's our next piece of news. Um, if you're ready to go on to that one.
yep, take it on.
All right. And this is another article from Star Wars Newsnet, and it talks about bringing previously unused characters into the Cassian Andor series. So there is still some talk about Cassian. I think it is still going on. Like you said, it could be in trouble potentially given our situation. But we did have a little bit of an update about Cassian for those of you out there that are excited about it. And I really am excited about this series, given my love for Rogue One and the idea of just having a spy series in
Yeah.
in the world of Star Wars during the time of the rebellion and the Empire. Um, so Movie Web had a chance to interview Neil Scanlon, um, and he's a presence on the visual effects side of Lucasfilm. And he says, what's fun about this, in many ways, I don't think it feels different than working on a movie. It certainly doesn't feel like we're making any compromises. It's the same creative conditions in every department. And he goes on to say, um, a lot of the characters that we built for all the films maybe didn't make it to the final cut of certain films, because that's just the way the film process happens. And he says it's this wonderful second opportunity to bring back some of the characters that we've made and bring them to this new storyline, in a more integrated way. So, there is still Cassian stuff going on here, and
Right.
it sounds
Yeah.
like they're bringing in some characters that maybe they weren't previously able to use on other films.
Hmm.
And so, it sounds like it's not dead. I think they're still working on this thing, and we could still see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, and that brings us to our last one, right?
Yeah, and this one I think you're probably very excited about.
Indeed. Very excited for this one.
Yes. So we had an announcement that Star Wars Pod Racer is going to be released on PS4, and was there
Switch.
and
Yeah.
Switch.
Episode 1 Racers coming to Switch, and not an actual date for it yet. And also, I wanted to throw into this that Jedi Academy also came out
Hmm.
on. It was late last week. Maybe it might have been Thursday or Friday. Uh, that came out as well, and that's actually the third entry in the Jedi Knight series. So, some
Right.
pretty cool classic games coming out, which I'm very excited for.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
cool that they're doing that. How do you feel about this one in particular? Because I thought when I
episode
heard
one,
this, I was like, oh, I was
Episode
like,
one
Adam's going to be
Racer.
real excited.
I love Episode One Racer, and I
Hmm.
remember I was 14 or 15 when that actually hit on Nintendo 64, and I used to just come home from high school every day and race for like an hour or so. And I love Episode 1 Racer. I can't wait to pick this
Yeah.
one up again and jump in a pod racer again. So it's a really cool, just a lap racing game. One of the coolest things, I think, one of my favorite things that came out of Episode 1 for sure. So
Yeah, I'm excited about this. Now, I haven't actually played the original game.
okay.
I was really into Rogue Squadron for Nintendo 64. I remember
Yeah.
playing that one, but this one not so much. So I'm excited. I don't know if they're going to improve the graphics or anything, or if it'll be based,
Usually, yeah, I mean, so Episode 1 Racers had some re-releases since then, like since the
Mhm.
64 days. It had a release on PlayStation 2, and then it's been on PC for a little while. Um, so it's had a little bit of graphical enhancements over the last few years, but usually when they do these ones, it's just kind of a port of what they've done before.
Right.
So they'll clean it up a little bit for Switch, and so for Jedi Outcast, they added motion controls and things like that. So they might do something like that, or
Hmm.
take advantage of the Joy Cons in some form or fashion. So,
Sure.
but I don't think we'll be getting like any huge graphic improvements or anything like that.
Now, what I'd really love to see them do, similar to how they've done with Resident Evil, and
Hmm.
how they've kind of basically
Remastered stuff.
remastered the game entirely, and,
Hmm.
and, and made it fit on a next gen console. Um, I would love to see maybe Knights of the Old Republic, or something like that, where they give us an updated version of it that
Yeah.
fits on the next gen consoles. But yeah,
Knights of
I'd
the
love
Old
to see
Republic
that.
has had a lot of re-releases also, and it's even on mobile. Like I have it on my
Hmm.
iPad. I wouldn't be surprised to see that come, but I would imagine I don't know that there would be a total rebuild kind of like Resident Evil. So
Right,
um,
right.
it's really easy to just kind of throw these on different platforms and I'll just fix some bugs as needed. So uh,
Yeah.
I would love
Yeah,
this.
it's still
Yeah,
awesome. It's
I
still
would
really
love to
cool that
see
they're
that.
doing it.
Yeah, I would
Hmm.
definitely love to see like a whole ground up rebuild, but I don't
Yeah,
know that we'll get that. So
right. You could be right about that, sir. Well,
oh,
I think that wraps up our news segment for this week.
all right, let's do Clone Wars.
Good. The show is about to begin.
All right, season 7, episode 6, Clone Wars. We're continuing the Ahsoka, Tano, and Trace arc. This episode was titled "Deal No Deal." Any thoughts on that title right off the bat, Josh?
Yeah, Deal or No Deal. That was like a game show,
Game
right?
show. Yeah, that was
Uh,
the Howie Mandel
yeah.
one.
I don't have specific thoughts
Okay.
about the title. I did have thoughts about the quote at the beginning.
Yeah,
But
so let's just jump
before we
into
jump
the.
to that, did you have any thoughts on the title?
I mean, not really. It's just,
Yeah.
Rafa's making deals and
Mhm.
they're falling through, and she's keeping herself in trouble and keeping her sister in trouble. But um,
Yeah.
so yeah, let's just get into the fortune cookie then. Mistakes are valuable lessons often learned too late. So you said you had
Yeah.
some thoughts, so just take it over.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that that's a great life lesson.
Hmm.
I think a lot of times when we make mistakes and you can learn something from your mistakes, but sometimes it's too late because maybe you've already betrayed that person's trust, or you've done too much damage already that maybe that person doesn't forgive you, and you learn
Right.
that mistake a little too late. Sometimes in life, fortunately, there are people out there that are forgiving and will give you another chance. And
Hmm.
I think that that's a blessing when that happens. When we can learn from our mistakes and still make it right. So those were kind of just my initial thoughts on that quote.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that in a little bit because I wanted to kind of revisit that towards the end here. But some things that I pulled out of this episode from the opening, I call them opening crawls, but I mean, they're not really
Hmm.
crawls because it's a voiceover. Um,
Yeah.
but one of the quotes I pulled out of that was, "Not everyone sees the Jedi as heroes,"
Hmm.
which I thought was interesting because we're coming to
Yeah.
the fall of the Jedi Order and we're getting closer and closer to that event. But there's already some discontent, so maybe it was a little easier for Palpatine to sell his propaganda at this point. I think maybe people are
Yep.
getting a little tired of the Jedi, and maybe, the Jedi have maybe been overstepping their bounds lately. So.
Yeah, I think, as audience members, we obviously see the Jedi as heroes, but
Hmm.
it's interesting to think about other perspectives, other points of view in the galaxy of the people that don't view them that way. And even myself as a viewer watching the prequels and seeing kind of the Jedi not being willing to, like, I don't know, they were very kind of stuck in their ways and stuck in the ways of doing things and rigid at times.
Hmm.
Um, and just their treatment of Anakin in ways made me kind of question the Jedi Council and the way they were doing things. So
Yeah, not even just Anakin, but Ahsoka.
yeah, yeah. So just thinking about it that way makes you think that, yeah, now I can see how other people in the galaxy might view them that way. And then
Yeah.
Palpatine was able to, like you said, turn the situation against the Jedi and make it seem like they were the villains. They were trying to overthrow the Republic and destroy him. And I think
Yeah.
that led to the Empire ultimately.
Yeah, indeed. So the episode really starts off with Ahsoka and Trace inside the hangar. They're doing some fixing, and Trace comments that that Ahsoka's obviously worked on ships before, and she had asked what kind of academy she attended, and Ahsoka says the Skywalker Academy. What do you think of
Yeah,
that?
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that idea of, just, they're down in, I mean, they're used to growing up in the lower levels, 1313.
Hmm.
They probably haven't heard of Anakin Skywalker
Hmm.
but so her able to answer the question basically truthfully, but not that they would know what that meant.
Right.
Um, you know, and I just liked how she said the Skywalker Academy since he
Yeah.
trained her. Hmm.
It made me think about that whole theory before Rise of Skywalker about the Skywalker Order. You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't
it
think
was
about that. Like,
it was interesting, and it
yeah.
makes me wonder if maybe in some other story later if Rey might start up her Skywalker Academy.
Yeah, that's still a possibility because I would have liked to have
Right?
seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. So Rafa comes in and she has another break even quick screen scheme on her
Hmm.
hands, and she had originally hired some other pilot, which upsets her sister Trace because Trace has just built this ship, the Silver Angel.
Yeah.
Do you think the Silver Angel name's gonna stick? Do you think it's gonna become like something that is endearing almost, or do you think that they're gonna find a name for the ship as they finish up this arc?
Yeah, and I mean, Trace really seems, she's really attached to her ship, and she's really attached to the name of it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it'll probably stick. I think it's really important to her. So that would be my prediction.
Okay, cool, cool.
What do you think? You think they're gonna
I
change the
think
name?
it's no, I think it's gonna. I actually think it's gonna stick.
Yeah, yeah.
So they start to take off because Trace's pilot falls through, and so she does let. I'm sorry, Rafa's pilot falls through. So Trace
Mhm.
gets her chance to pilot this ship and go on this mission. But they get into the wrong lane, into the wrong traffic lane. They get into
Yeah.
the military lane.
Uh-huh.
And then we have this really well done scene with Anakin, where he senses Ahsoka's presence and he lets them pass. Uh,
Yep.
and that was Yularen, right? I believe.
I think so.
Yeah. So, um, I loved that scene
Me,
and how that
me
was
too.
done. I loved it. That Anakin sensed her presence there, and he knew that she was on her way out, and so he let her go.
Yeah, me too. Actually, this is my favorite moment of the episode.
Yeah, me too.
Um,
I think me too.
for me, it was very Star Wars. It was very reminiscent of
Hmm.
when Luke and the gang were about to land on Endor in Return of the Jedi,
Yeah.
and Anik Vader senses Luke and lets them land. I'll deal with them myself, that type of
Oh
thing.
yeah, yeah. I didn't think about
Um,
that.
so it really reminded me of that moment,
Okay,
which I loved. Yeah, I
nice.
was all about that.
I didn't think about that at all. That's a great
Mhm.
tie-in. So the job is running spice. Rafa's job is running spice, and
Got a lot of
it
spice
starts
running going on
off.
lately in Star Wars.
We do, we do.
We got some
Uh,
Poe spice running. We got
yeah.
some Rafa.
So we end up on Kessel, a little bit of a different view of Kessel too, which was
Hmm.
interesting. Kind of the lush side of Kessel, where it's all green and there's castle, and
Yeah.
kind of the higher life, I guess. Kind of the posh life uh,
Hmm.
side of Kessel, which I thought was a really cool look.
Yeah.
I
That
kind of
that
like,
was
and I don't know why, but I kind of when I think of Kessel, I almost think of like Coruscant, where the whole planet looks like that. Um, and
yes.
I don't know,
And
I don't know why I think that, but it just so it's kind of interesting to see these beautiful green forests and all this scenery.
yeah.
So
I'm so glad you brought that up, Adam, because my wife Brittany was actually watching the episode with me last night, and
mhm.
she was like, "This doesn't look like Kessel," and I'm like, "Well, wait a second." I'm like, "Wait," because like all planets in Star Wars, it's a big planet, so certain areas might look different from other areas, and then they finally got to like the mining area, and she was like, "Oh, okay, that looks like Kessel." So that's interesting that you kind of thought the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So they get their spice. They get back on the ship. Once Ahsoka finds out that this is a spice running job, she has major reservations about this. And then once they're back on the ship, they find that they're going to go visit the Pikes to drop this stuff off.
Hmm.
Which Ahsoka is just flat out no, we
Yeah.
can't do that.
Right.
And they let it slip, that maybe Trace's ship could end up taken here. It's funny
Hmm.
because Ahsoka says they could take your ship, they could take your life, and then Trace is like, "What are they gonna do to my ship?" Like she doesn't care if
Yeah.
she dies. It's
It's
her
just a ship.
ship.
She
Yeah,
really cares about that ship.
right. So in order to save her ship, in her mind, she thinks that she needs to dump the spice. So she dumps the spice, um,
Hmm.
which causes a bigger problem because now they have nothing to give to the Pikes.
Right.
Uh, I thought that whole exchange was really good.
Hmm.
It shows a little bit of everybody's side here because Rafa doesn't seem Rafa is just focused on the job, on the money. That's what she wants.
Yep.
Uh, and still as a character, I'm not really behind her, and I think it's just her shiftiness. Like she's shifty like
Yeah.
Poe. She got that she
Hmm.
does all that shifty stuff.
She does that shifty stuff. Where'd you learn that shifty stuff?
So but she's very focused on just this whole debt that she's gotten herself into, and she's dragging her sister down into this, and with the excuse that this is what sisters do, they take care of each other, but she's the one that seems to be hurting everything here. So uh you know Trace is very passionate about her ship and what she does. That's kind of part of her identity, I think, at this point.
Hmm.
And Ahsoka's just trying to keep the balance here. And it's almost like when I was watching that scene this morning, to me, it seems like you have Trace, and then the cartoon where you have like the angel on one shoulder and the
Hmm.
demon on the other
Yeah, it's
shoulder.
kind of like, yeah, it's Ahsoka
It's
and
what it
Rafa
it's what it
on her
felt like
shoulder.
to
Yeah,
me. Yeah, it just
yeah, because
kind of
Ahsoka
tearing
was
at Trace and trying to trying to get her to do these two separate things.
right, because Ahsoka was definitely considering like the moral aspects of what they were doing, and kind of that moral ambiguity of the situation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So they do actually get to the Pikes, and Ahsoka's plan is to mind trick them, which almost starts to work. But then she can't mind trick the whole pack of them.
Hmm.
So it kind of deteriorates from there. There's some patrol ships that show up, and then they get stuck in a tractor beam, and that's where we leave off. It's the end of
Yep.
the episode. So um, I have a couple questions here, but overall, your thoughts on the episode?
I enjoyed it. I felt about the same way about this episode that I did about the last one, where, pun intended, I'm a little lukewarm on this arc so far, to be honest.
Okay.
I love seeing Ahsoka. Um, the supporting characters of Rafa and Trace, for whatever reason, aren't doing much for me.
Okay.
But I love where they're going. I love 1313 and exploring that. I love going back to Kessel,
Yeah.
and they were on that path to Kessel. It looked just like it did in Solo when
Hmm.
they were going to Kessel, and I
Yep.
love that. I love Ahsoka. I love her character. I love the visuals are just
The visuals
amazing.
are beautiful.
The
Yeah.
animation is beautiful,
Yeah.
especially
It's even better
if
than the
you're able
first
to.
arc for some reason. Like I don't know why, but
Yeah.
it looks even better than the first arc.
Hmm. Yeah, and especially if you have a 4K TV and you have HDR capabilities, Dolby
Hmm.
Vision, whatever, it looks amazing. Um, but yeah, the story overall, just it's like, I think I would enjoy this arc more if it weren't in the last season, if it were in a previous season.
Okay. Okay.
Where I feel like, okay, where's the um, I'm trying to find the word for it, but like
Where's the war?
the kind of like, yeah, where's the
Okay.
desperation of
Okay.
this being the final season, and where is it going? I just want to see where this is taking Ahsoka ultimately. Like, I want to get to that stuff. But yeah, I mean, overall I liked it. That's about how I feel about it.
I've started to view this last season as kind of like a lost episodes extended
Hmm.
cut, almost.
Yeah, I
Just
can
kind
see
of
that.
just kind of a way to tie up some last minute things that they didn't get a chance to tie up before. So,
Right.
um, but yeah, so I mean, we're definitely getting three distinct arcs here, and I think the next arc is going to be kind of that major story
Hmm.
arc where
Yeah.
from the trailer, it still seems like we're gonna get Ahsoka on Mandalore somehow because there's a
Yeah.
scene with Ahsoka and Maul.
And maybe
Um,
that'll be a part of the final four episode, or final
final,
3 or 4 episode
yeah,
arc or whatever.
yeah, it
That
seems that way,
Ahsoka will still show up in that arc as well. You know what I mean?
right? So, yeah, so we still have the whole Siege of Mandalore to go, and all that
Hmm.
stuff. So, um, I'm just kind of viewing these first two arcs as a way to finish up a couple stories that they really wanted to
Yeah.
tell. So,
Yeah, I think
uh,
looking at it through that lens, I might have a little more appreciation for
yeah.
it.
I
Hmm.
enjoyed this episode. I think I enjoyed the first episode of this arc a little more than this one.
Hmm.
Uh I'm actually really digging Trace. I think that's a great character, and
Hmm.
I'm still really not getting into Rafa that much at all. And
Right.
I don't know if it's the character or if I'm just not connecting somehow. Like I just don't know. So
Yeah,
but
I hear
I
you there.
but I am really digging this arc. I really like this arc a lot, and
Hmm.
like you said, the animation's beautiful. I love Ahsoka, how her story's unfolding in
Hmm.
these couple episodes. So Definitely interested to see where this goes, for sure.
Yes. Well, good, sir. I'm glad that
So
you're getting a lot of enjoyment out of it.
yeah, definitely. Going back to that fortune cookie, mistakes are valuable lessons often learned too late. I wanted to
Hmm.
ask, what episode in this episode, what mistakes were made that were learned from too late? So I wanted to take a look at this by character. Ahsoka, do you think that she made mistakes in this episode? Because even at the end, Rafa's no, Trace says that there's plenty of blame to go around here.
Hmm.
Where when
Yeah.
Rafa tries to pin this whole thing on Ahsoka,
Right.
what mistakes do you think that Ahsoka might have made, even
The one
in
that
this arc
comes
as a
to
whole?
Yeah. The one that comes to mind for me for this particular episode with Ahsoka, I almost feel like it's indecisiveness.
Yeah. Okay.
Where she was kind of like debating what to do, and while she was taking her time trying to figure that out,
Right.
the spice got dropped basically. So that was what I thought of with Ahsoka, was just kind of not making the decision that needed to be made.
Right. And I almost wonder if at some point her mistake is just not getting Trace out of this situation.
Hmm.
Overall,
Yeah.
'cause Trace is not in a good situation. I know that
Right.
she's with her sister, and I know that she probably loves her sister, but her sister is not doing her any favors.
No.
Um, she's on the road to getting her killed by some gang or
Oh
crime
yeah.
syndicate. So
Hmm.
I almost wonder if that's Ahsoka's mistake is not getting her out of that
Yeah.
fast enough. So,
There's certainly an argument to be made for that.
Trace, uh, what mistakes has she made that she hasn't learned from yet?
Well, I mean, I think, just kind of going along with her sister's
Yeah,
schemes.
right.
Obviously the, abrupt just getting rid of the spice and dropping it, and then getting them all in even more trouble than they would have been otherwise. Um, because I think there's another answer to that. There'd be another way out of that situation, rather than dropping the only thing they had to bargain with. So that would be my answer to that question. What are your thoughts?
Kind of going back to what I said before, just sticking with her sister so long. I
Hmm.
mean, Trace has her own set of dreams and desires, and it just seems like she's not getting to realize that because she's constantly stuck uh in the problems that her sister's putting on her. So,
Certainly. Hmm.
and I mean, so as far as mistakes go, the lion's share of this I put on Trace. If you can't on Rafa,
Hmm.
if you can't tell yet. So, I mean, the mistakes that she makes, she's taking any type of job from any type of person, and she's not vetting anything, and she's putting her sister in danger. I mean, like I wonder how far this arc will take them. I wonder if some tragedy strikes these two girls, and I wonder if maybe Rafa, so let's go with this for a second. Let's say that maybe Trace doesn't make it out of this arc alive. Maybe something happens that her sister does that gets them in trouble, and Trace has to pay for this. And maybe that's the lesson that Rafa learns. And I don't know. That's just a wild guess. That's just a
Yeah, I could see that happening.
So, so any major mistakes you want to point out from Rafa's?
I think her mistakes are a little bit more obvious.
Yeah, yeah.
Just given the poor choices that she's making, getting involved with the syndicates.
Hmm.
They could have done that job and still earned some credits, without taking the spice to the pikes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be mine.
Cool. Cool. That brings us to the end of the Clone Wars. So, if you're ready, we'll dive into the Skywalker Legacy documentary.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this segment today. So let's talk about that documentary.
Luke, you're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
We talked a few weeks ago. I was dead set on not getting a digital version of the Rise of Skywalker, and I totally caved when Disney said, you know what, 4 or 5 days early, here you go, you can have it. So, um, my willpower crumbled at that moment, and I jumped in and I grabbed that digital copy, and I'm so glad I did because it's given me the last 2 weeks to spend some time with the Skywalker Legacy documentary, which I've watched 2.5 times now,
Hmm.
which almost kind of rivals how much I've watched the movie itself.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it's a feature length documentary.
mhm,
This thing's a couple hours long, and I'm glad I ended up caving as well and picking up the digital copy and
yeah,
just diving into some of this stuff.
yeah. I've heard everyone's talking about this show, and I've heard different points of view, different takes on this documentary, and
Mhm.
I wanted to talk about this documentary first because it's a wonderful documentary and I love it.
It is. Hmm.
But I want to do a little differently, so we decided to do this. Well, I decided, and then you agreed. um, um, but I wanted to do a top 10 version of this of our kind of our top moments here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back and forth. We're gonna take turns. I'll let Josh lead off, but Josh will give one, then I'll give one, and we'll kind of go back and forth until we get to 10. And then if we have anything left over we haven't talked about yet that we want to talk about, we'll do some honorable mentions. So Josh, why don't you take it? Give us your first top moment from the Skywalker Legacy documentary.
So, Adam, the way I did this was I kind of just went through chronological order here of,
Yeah.
of the documentary and everything. And the first thing that really struck me was George Lucas talking about Star Wars being a space fantasy slash modern fairy tale. And
Yeah.
I love when hearing George talk about Star Wars and what Star Wars means to him, what his intentions behind it were. Um, and it's not science fiction, you know what I mean? And just this idea of it being a space fantasy, because like
Hmm.
you, I love fantasy stories. I love Lord of the Rings and everything. So thinking about this being a space fantasy, um,
Okay.
as opposed to being science fiction, I like that he said that. That was
Nice.
my first one.
First one I flagged there was actually JJ on the Millennium Falcon saying he never thought he'd be back here.
Hmm.
And it
Yeah.
just kind of sunk in, I guess, at that moment. That after The Force Awakens, he was kind of done,
Hmm.
and he in no way expected to be back in this universe, as he says, and working with these people. And I've heard, originally there was the whole thing about Colin Trevorrow and all that stuff, and I get that. But then I've also heard that there is a little bit of a rift between Lucasfilm and Bad Robot because of how what JJ might have wanted to do a Bad Robot versus letting Lucasfilm handle. Uh,
Hmm.
but just kind of his genuine surprise at being called and brought back to finish this off, and JJ through this whole documentary, I just feel so genuine about him.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I loved watching JJ in this. I loved watching him direct. Um, and just his excitement about everything.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, yeah, my first thought moment was kind of getting JJ's thoughts about coming back to Star Wars. So,
All right. Well, the second one for me was, and they did this throughout the documentary. They would show techniques they used for the filming of Episode 9, and then they would flash back to how
yeah,
they used
yeah.
those same techniques in the original trilogy.
Hmm.
Like for example, when they used miniatures for the like the sandcrawler miniature at the end of the documentary.
Oh,
Um,
that being forced perspective blew my mind.
yeah,
It
yeah,
blew
that
my
was
mind.
awesome. Uh-huh.
And I want
Um,
that sandcrawler. Like I saw because I finished
Absolutely.
watching that documentary again today, and you see that miniature sandcrawler, the model. I
Yeah,
want that.
that would be awesome to have. And then they showed like the saber training, and like where Adam Driver was training and Daisy Ridley was training, but then they flash back to like Luke doing his saber training for the movie, and
Hmm.
um, just and even like the creature work, when they showed how they worked on Babu Frick, and then they went back, flashback to how they worked on Yoda. So I think
Yeah.
just those flashbacks of the same techniques being used.
Yeah.
That was another thing that stood out.
Yeah, how everything tied together, not just in the movie itself, but the documentary as a whole. Having,
Hmm.
and I'm just kind of expanding on your idea here, but having Sally Guinness in this,
Hmm.
Alec Guinness's granddaughter, it's
Yeah, that was cool.
just awesome stuff that I never would have known that that was Alec Guinness's granddaughter, but now I do, and it adds so much
Right.
more to me watching the movie next time I see her show up in that scene. So,
Hmm.
um, my next one that this kind of encompasses a little bit of it, and hopefully I don't step on too many of yours here. Um, but just the crew as a whole, and just the fun that they had together,
Hmm.
and you see this repeatedly throughout the whole documentary. Uh, John Boyega and Oscar Isaac just kind of having fun together, and
Oh yeah.
like towards the beginning, there's the part where John was saying how he already had the part, and Oscar was still auditioning. um,
Right.
just everyone just had, and I'm sure that there was strife, and I'm sure that there were disagreements, but from what I see in the documentary, it just felt like it was just such a good group to be a part of.
Yeah.
Um, Richard E. Grant, uh, the scenes with him, how he was just so excited to be on Star Wars, and he wanted to push all the
Hmm.
buttons, and just seeing how much fun he had. Domhnall Gleeson messing
Hmm.
up his lines, and then they kind of go back to Harrison with all his stuff, and
Yeah, that was
uh,
hilarious.
I just that whole thing, and even seeing Daisy Ridley work the clapper on some of those scenes,
Hmm.
you just get the sense that she wants to be there.
Yep.
So that's my next moment. It's just kind of everyone having a good time and being part of a family.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it looked like they had just a wonderful time doing it, and it seems like it would have been a really exciting team to be a part of, for sure.
Yeah,
Um, the next one I had was I really liked seeing the stack of Star Wars novels,
I was gonna talk. Yeah, yeah.
including Star Wars Aftermath,
Hmm.
being on Chris Terrio's desk,
Hmm.
and it's obvious that Chris Terrio loves Star Wars. He
Yeah,
dug really
yeah.
he dove deep into the canon of it and making sure things lined up and everything. And I'm sure he was well aware of the Emperor's contingency that was
Hmm.
talked about in the Aftermath series and everything. So um, yeah, that was my next one.
But and this is when we talked about this last week. One of the things I said that even if you didn't like this movie as a whole, I hope that this documentary can kind of increase your appreciation for the people that made it.
Hmm.
And Chris Terrio and JJ are at the top of that list because
Oh yeah.
they knew what they were doing with this movie. And Chris, like you said, he has that material there, and he knows what he wants. He knows these parts of the story. Um, on top of Aftermath, I'm pretty sure that that's one of the Thrawn novels, the older
I
ones,
was wond I was wondering. Yeah.
because it's definitely Legends. It has the Legends banner at the top.
Uh
Um, and the color kind of makes it look like it's one of the Thrawn novels.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, I
uh,
could see that.
and those Thrawn stories deal with clones, and
Hmm.
we know that that was a part of that story with Palpatine,
Yep.
and he's making Snokes and all that stuff. So,
Hmm.
yeah, definitely increased my admiration for their appreciation of the story as a whole.
Yeah,
Definitely.
most definitely.
Let's see. What do I want to bring up next here? Let's do this one. Uh, the puppetry
Hmm.
across the board was incredible.
For sure. I mean, what about on Pisana? How they like when they were in Jordan and they dug out that trench
I
like
have
underneath
I have that marked.
the baby Aki Aki or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, the Aki Aki, but then there was also
Yeah.
which I had to look at the dictionary for this one, but there was also the Okie Pokey, which are
Yeah.
those little rat things. So you have Aki
Right.
Aki and Okie Pokies.
Uh-huh.
But
Do the Aki Aki and the Okie Pokey and you turn yourself around. Is that how the song goes?
no, that's not how
Oh,
it goes.
man. Thought I had it.
But yeah, those little Okie Pokey things that were, these actuated electronic things that they put on a board and they buried in the sand so that they're sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
I had mentioned I had well not mentioned I had written down the Aki Aki the children because like you said there was a trench under that and there was
Yeah.
puppeteers under that whole thing.
It's incredible.
Making that the Vexus, and to think that they actually that didn't make it into every scene, that puppet wasn't actually what we saw, that it was actually replaced with a CG puppet.
Yeah.
In most scenes they said. So I think that there were some scenes where it was practical. But and then seeing how Daisy said that she actually felt this connection because it was there. That when she's healing this thing and she's looking at it because it's right there. That she feels this type of connection with it. Kerry Russell said later that you go into a Star Wars movie and you expect you might be imagining some of the stuff, but she was so surprised how you get there and it's all there. Like you're actually in this thing.
Right. And Adam, I want to talk about that for a second because
Yeah.
we've talked about, and I've made the argument for, especially on these movies, using going on location, using these practical things, practical effects versus what they're doing with the Mandalorian. While I completely appreciate what they're doing with the Mandalorian, and I think for a TV series, it's great being able to use that stagecraft technique and everything. I still don't think you can replace what they did with movies like The Rise of Skywalker and going on location
Yeah.
and using those practical effects just because of what the actor said and Kerry Russell and it's just hard to replace that type of technique with um even though I love what they're doing with the Mandalorian and how they're doing it. I think it makes sense for that show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that.
A couple of other puppets I had mentioned were Maz Kanata. That wasn't, it wasn't a total puppet. There was some CG enhancements to that puppet.
Right.
But the fact that
Because
it was
in The
a
Force
puppet at all,
Awakens, she was all
CG.
CG in The Force Awakens.
And then she had that passing scene in The Last Jedi, where she was, she was definitely CG there too. But the fact
Yeah,
that
I
was
hated that scene, by the way.
I don't want to get on a tangent here, but
No, I just didn't like that scene.
yeah. So it's the fact that she was a puppet at all, though, was just incredible. And seeing that thing move, it's just like a real life Maz Kanata sitting there.
Yeah.
And then I want to talk about this later, so I'm going to talk about just the puppet here. But the Babu Frick puppet.
Oh my, that is incredible.
Seeing that thing move, and then how they were making his mouth like open, like just like surprised, and it was amazing.
The amount of movements in the face of that small animatronic, so impressive. And I was watching last night the Imagineering story, and it was the final episode of that on Disney Plus, and they were talking about how they did things for the Avatar land, for Pandora and the Animal Kingdom, and they had this like big Navi. I think they're the Navi, right?
Yes.
This big animatronic, and the way that they were able to have so many different subtle facial movements in that animatronic. And I was like, well, this is Babu Frick, just on a much smaller scale. How they were able to do that it just blew my mind.
Yeah. All right, so mine was puppets. What's your next moment here?
My next one was seeing the Force Awakens table read again.
I brought that up too.
For some reason, that moment just when I first saw the picture from the table read back when they were making the Force Awakens, I like that. It just introduced this feeling of excitement, of wonder, of like, where is this trilogy gonna go? What are they gonna do with these new characters and the old characters? And just that feeling of them coming together and doing that table read. I loved seeing that again. That
Yeah.
was my next one.
Yeah.
Sorry if
I
I'm stealing yours.
no, because I had actually I had put that before, like when you had mentioned that you were seeing how everything tied together. I had put
Mhm.
that, and I forgot to mention that earlier. But yeah, I loved seeing that
Mhm.
table read again. So quick count here. I've done, so we're on 7. So this will be number 8. And my next one will be number 8. I have to bring up. Let's see here. Since I did Babu Frick last time, let's do this. Um, the parts with Shirley Henderson, and finding out that she was actually the one that was controlling that puppet.
Yeah, Moaning Myrtle, right?
Moaning Myrtle, yeah.
Yeah, from Harry Potter.
Yeah, finding out that she was actually the one that was, like I said,
She was
doing the puppeteering as she was doing the voice, and
doing the
that's
voice.
yeah,
Yeah.
and as they're filming, they're not dubbing her over like. Well, I mean, I'm sure that there might be a little bit of dubbing there.
I'll tell you what, for somebody who can't multitask, that's me. Like
I
that
can't
blew my
imagine that
mind.
because I mean, you think about it, it's not just a regular like sock puppet. Like she's controlling
Right.
this thing almost like
She's
it's an RC car on a
yeah.
controller, and to get that down and to get her voice down with the mouth movements with everything as she's doing it, just and then to see her bring JJ to tears with that
Oh my
with
goodness, where
that
she just
go where she's
kept
just going
go.
and she just
He
drags it out
was
for like 20 seconds and he's dying and he's like
and JJ's like, what if we put that in the movie?
can you imagine if we put that in the
Can you
movie?
imagine we put that in the movie?
And then I had to go back and get her name, but the lady that worked with her, Jill McCullough,
Uh-huh.
coming up with that language, which I found out from the novel was called Anzellin.
Okay.
Coming up with that language as she's working with her, and it should be these like stops and these like guttural things, and
Mhm.
I love that whole scene, and like just like I said, seeing JJ doubled over with laughter,
Yeah, that was
you can't help it.
I was laughing just as hard as he was. Like
Yeah,
when
yeah,
I couldn't stop myself laughing when I watched that.
yeah. So Josh, why don't you give us your next one? This will be number 9 if I'm counting right, but it's not gonna
What
matter.
what, what number is this?
I'm pretty sure this is number 9 overall.
Overall, okay.
But we're gonna be going. I know I still have some stuff I want to talk about, so we'll do some
Yeah.
honorable mentions for sure.
So the next thing for me is about Leia and Carrie Fisher, and how they wrote and filmed scenes around what they had previously filmed with Carrie,
Yes,
instead of doing it the other way around. You know,
yes.
they kind of built the scenes and the dialogue around what
Mm-hmm.
they already had with her, and just the way they did that, and the decision to include Leia being trained by Luke in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because that moment in Empire when Yoda says there's another, in Return of the Jedi when he tells Luke to pass on what he's learned. I don't think it would have been right if he hadn't trained Leia.
Yeah,
Um, and just that the way they handled Leia in this movie and the way it was done, I really appreciated.
yeah, for sure. And seeing Billy and all this, and
Yes,
seeing Billy's
yes,
perspective on all that, because there was all kinds of this crap stuff on Twitter about Billy is involved in this and her mother's all this stuff, and just
she
to
was
see
clearly
how
very supportive
passionate
of
that
it.
she loved yeah, and to see how passionate she was about this, and to see how she felt, like like this is almost like Carrie's way of making her the star of the
Making
movie
her,
again.
yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah, and then JJ gives a speech on the day that they're doing the Leia stuff, and this heartfelt thing about how we don't want a moment of silence because Carrie wouldn't stand for that, and
Hmm.
then he kind of turns and you see him kind of almost offer the mic to Billy, and Billy's like, "No, you did great."
Yeah.
Um, just as everyone handled it with such reverence, but and then they go into the whole thing about how everyone got, it was a hard day, but it was a good day because everyone got to share their memories about Carrie, and you know,
Hmm.
it was just really powerful
Yeah.
stuff. And then Billy talked later, about, and I had this for a different one, but Billy talked about how there was a scene with Rose where I think it's during that party at the end, and Billy's kind of hanging on Rose because Billy's been shot at that point. Her character, Connix, has been shot at that point,
Hmm.
and she's just said that she felt like that was a kind of a moment for her where just like real life, everything's kind of falling apart, and but she's being carried by friends, and what'd she say that even though she misses her loved ones, she's surrounded by these people, and
Yeah.
I'm probably misquoting that a good bit, but that's the gist of it, I guess. So
Hmm. Absolutely.
yeah, the Carrie stuff was just amazing.
I
Um,
agree.
there's so many I want to pick, and I'm down to like my last one here. All right, let's go with, since this is number 10, since this is kind of the last official one, I'm gonna go with this one, and it's just kind of the way this documentary ends with how it wraps everything up. And what I mean by that is not just how it ends, but
Hmm.
how we get to see just how everyone felt as things were ending on this. JJ has this pretty long quote that I pulled out, where he says, "It's always a funny thing working with people you like as much as these people. It's a bit like being in a family, but really, it's a bit like being a parent. You ideally love the people that you're with, and then your kids go away, and then
Hmm.
this is a really powerful thing." Hearing him talk about that, and then you hear Chris talking about how they had such a hard time writing the end of this movie, and then someone said to him, maybe it's just because you don't want it to end,
Hmm.
and he said he thought that was a large part of it. Um, that scene with the hug between that Finn and Ray and Poe share, that was filmed, and it almost seemed like like if I'm projecting this, like JJ is kind of saying to everybody at the end, all right, now let's kind of cheer a little bit louder. You can kind of get that moment, get that emotion drummed up a little bit, and then
Hmm.
you see John Boyega break away from that, and he's wiping his face, and Daisy's just that's not just acting. I'm sure that there's some feeling there too.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and then Kathleen Kennedy saying, "This is I hate wrapping this up," and she's talking about the sets, and it's like she has to tear down all these sets, and I'm, you know, sad stuff. It's
Yeah,
like,
that's got to be the worst part of filming is you
yeah,
put all this time and effort into building these great sets, and
yeah, and I'm
you
sitting
have
there
to tear it all
thinking,
down.
don't tear this stuff down, keep
Yeah,
this.
leave it up. Leave
I'm
it up. I
sure,
want to go visit
I'm sure that,
it.
that's what I was thinking this morning. I mean, what if Lucasfilm bought like a plot of land in California or something like that, and just plopped all these sets down on it, and it's like, hey, $50, and you guys can all come in and walk around on these sets and
Now that is an
and
incredible
everything like
idea
that.
because I was thinking
Like
about
like you go to Disney, and it's like, all right, well now Lucasfilm has their own park. You guys want to come here and check out the crashed Death Star or the
I
Tantive
think
V4?
that's such a cool idea because with Galaxy's Edge, even
Yeah,
though you're getting a new planet,
right.
you're not really revisiting some of the
Mm-hmm.
stuff from the other films. That could be a great opportunity to like visit some of those moments from the movies that we love.
Yeah,
And I think that's a brilliant idea. I mean, maybe we should pitch
maybe,
that.
maybe
Maybe we'll get a cut.
they're probably all torn
Maybe
down by now.
yeah.
um, but yeah, just seeing how they wrapped everything up, and Anthony Daniels going back to seeing the Skywalker Ranch, and just how he was so taken back by that. He said he was
Oh yeah.
not sad but wistful. And
Hmm.
uh, oh, and by the way, Anthony Daniels in the '80s with that high
Oh,
collar suit and that high
I
back leather
know.
chair is ridiculous.
I loved how he was talking about like
Yeah,
how British C3PO
yeah.
is,
Oh,
and
oh yeah, about the butler thing.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was thinking like, man, Anthony Daniels, you are so British right now. Yeah.
So yeah, so I guess that brings us to 10. Josh, you have any honorable mentions for us?
I have a bunch because I came
Yeah,
up
me
with
too.
like
I almost have
yeah,
another 10.
I came up with so many.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and this kind of goes along with something you said earlier, just watching JJ direct and watching Daisy Ridley act and react to things really blew me away. And just, for example, like just those little moments when JJ was filming like Daisy Ridley's reactions to things, like
Hmm.
she thought she killed Chewie, and
Oh
her just kind
yeah,
of her
and then
screaming,
yeah, yeah.
um and then like her reaction to sliding down the sand hill at Luke's homestead at the
Oh, I
end,
love
and
that.
kind of like her hating all the things she just did. Like she
Yeah,
fought Kylo
I
Ren,
love
and
Daisy. Daisy is so
yeah, I love Daisy. She's
yeah.
amazing.
And she already
Um,
defeated the Dark Lord. Yeah,
yeah, I
it's
already
like
defeated the Dark Lord. Isn't that enough?
yeah,
I had to
yeah.
slide down this.
She hated
She
that
was
thing.
scared of going down that hill
Yeah,
of sand when she
yeah.
did all these other crazy things. Um, but like when her reaction to saying, and this is why I think it's perfect.
Hmm.
Her reaction
Yeah,
when they were filming her saying Ray Skywalker, and she
yeah,
had this tear that just came down her face,
yeah.
and
And
just that the emotions of that. um
even JJ,
I,
it was JJ was obviously shook,
yeah,
all shook up by it. So
he was all shook up.
yep.
um but yeah, I love that.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah.
definitely. I got to bring up Eunice Huthart because first of all, Huthart is an amazing last name. And second of all, because she is incredible, dude.
Yeah, yeah,
Her and Daisy kept talking
she
about
is.
her energy and her intensity.
Yes.
Man, uh, I can understand how that would be intense to work for her, but it's almost like one of those people that you kind of want to be around, you know?
Yeah, she, from all I can tell, she's a brilliant stunt coordinator.
Everything that I've seen so far is
Hmm.
confirmed that. But
Yeah.
her talking about her and Adam Driver going back and forth.
Hmm.
Where Adam wants first of all, where Adam doesn't want to do a certain thing to get the physicality needed for that stunt because that's not what his
Yeah.
character would do.
Yeah.
And then also because he wants to do his own stuff, and then she's telling him, "All right, but it's got to look good.
Yes.
If it doesn't look good, I'm
Yeah.
pulling you
If it
out."
doesn't look good, you're not doing it.
But then
Yeah,
yeah,
that was another one for me, was Adam Driver. We don't
hmm,
get to see a lot of Adam Driver and hear a
right,
lot from him,
right,
but I love that he wanted to do his stunts, and he's so
yeah, yeah,
protective over this role and so
right,
invested in this role. That was one of my honorable mentions for sure.
yeah. And Adams, when he was shooting the water scenes for Kef Beer,
Mhm.
Kef Beer, I don't know.
Yeah, however you say it.
Where he says at one point it was his birthday, and he goes, "I don't know why
Yeah,
that
he's
would
like, I don't,
matter. Not that I would
I
want to
don't know if
kill her more
I want to
because it's
kill her more because it's my birthday.
yeah, hilarious stuff."
Yeah. Oh man.
Ian McDermott, his parts,
Yeah.
and seeing everyone
Hmm.
freak out because I mean, man, when they made him into Palpatine, like that character just burst to life.
Yeah. Yeah.
When he was in that robe again, and
Hmm.
Daisy's had said, I think Oscar Isaac, he
Hmm.
was in that interview too, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
to see when they said when they see him in that costume and in that makeup, how that character just comes to life.
Hmm.
And then they start talking about Ian's voice, and how JJ said that is like he has this. He said he has this instrument that can go from a
Yeah.
whisper to a roar.
Hmm.
Um, I loved seeing everything about Ian McDermott.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. Another one of my honorable mentions was seeing the Ralph McQuarrie painting
Yeah.
of 3PO in the desert,
Mm-hmm.
and how much that resembled the desert in Jordan
Mm-hmm.
where they shot the Pasana scenes, and
Yeah.
it looked like it was just what he had painted basically.
Yeah.
Um, so I enjoyed that. That was another honorable mention.
And the John Williams. I can't believe we didn't talk about John
Yeah,
Williams yet. But uh, everything that they did, those 51 items that they made for his
that was
scene,
incredible.
it was
Yeah.
amazing. And
Hmm.
that whole droid shop was incredible as well.
They had the
did you
bad
see? I was gonna
robot
say
in there.
that's what I was just gonna say. Now, did you see the bad robot?
Yes, that
Yep.
was awesome.
But then there was B1s in there. There's all kinds of
Mhm.
astromech heads. I think it was here, but they even had like a model of, like you said, the Ralph McQuarrie version of C-3PO.
Mhm.
They had like a model of that was part of that
Yeah,
whole thing.
that was cool.
But yeah, the John Williams part, and how he didn't even want to do it, but he went home to his wife, and his wife said, "No, you have to do this." And it's just, um, just what can you say about John Williams other than what JJ said? He was a supernatural genius.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just had 2 more honorable mentions, if
Okay.
that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
The first one was the detail of the Death Star model that they used.
That
Um,
was one of mine.
that they had from I think it was from the original trilogy, and then how they recreated it for Episode 9, and then how they used blueprints actually of
Yes.
the Death Star, and
Yes.
then to digitally design the destroyed set of the throne room that we get to see in
Yes.
Episode 9. I thought
I
all of that was
Yeah.
unreal.
I remember seeing a thread on Twitter about how that vault couldn't have been there because there was because they're looking at it on the top level of things, like up the
Hmm.
stairs on that mezzanine,
Yeah.
and they're looking off to the wall, and they're seeing that the wall has this almost like screen looking thing that comes down, and then all these pillars and stuff, but that's not actually
Hmm.
where it was because it's destroyed
Right.
and it all fell through. And then you
Yes.
see at the bottom, like that's where at the bottom down on the stairs, that's where the vault would
That's
be.
where the vault was. Yeah.
uh
Hmm.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Did you have another one?
Yeah, I loved seeing Mark Hamill hanging around,
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
he was just like a kid in a candy store here because he's looking through everything. Like, as much as Harrison doesn't care about anything, Harrison Ford doesn't care about anything Star Wars. Mark Hamill is very much the opposite.
He cares so much.
He is into this stuff, and to see
Mhm.
him on that set and poking around the Babu Frick stuff, and
Yeah.
looking at the
That was
Kef,
cool.
yeah, looking at the Kef beer, Kef Burr, no, not Kef Burr, looking at the Kajimi,
Kajimi
the other
set
the other
and
K,
everything.
yeah, the other K word.
Yeah.
And just how interested he was and how vested he was in all this stuff, and like with the Babu Frick, like comes in and says, okay, now this is the alien that does the C-3PO stuff. Like, he knows this stuff, and
Yeah. Yeah.
right,
He's read the script. He knows what's
yeah,
going on. He's
yeah.
into it. Yeah.
So I loved seeing Mark Hamill, and the fact that he got to pour the foam for the original Yoda puppet.
Yeah.
Because he liked to hang around back then, and
Yeah.
it reminded me. I talked earlier about how Daisy hangs around, and Daisy likes to do the clapper, and so she's hanging around on scenes that aren't really her scenes, and it kind of equates those two together for me in a way.
Absolutely.
Because Mark is still doing that stuff. We found out he did that stuff back then, and then you see Daisy kind of doing the same thing. So,
For sure.
yep.
My last one was how they talked about the 2 things here. How they talked about the mythic concept of the dyad.
Yeah.
Which I didn't realize that was like a mythic concept, and Star Wars is all about using myths and every mythology. So I didn't love the dyad thing when I first saw the movie, but after seeing this, I have more appreciation for it, given that it's a kind of this mythic concept. And then also the idea that JJ brought to our attention that the balance of the Force isn't a permanent thing. The like Anakin fulfilled the prophecy, and Luke, helped with that, bringing the Force into balance. But then the Force comes out of balance again, and somebody else needs to bring the balance, and that person was Rey this time. So I love that.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So our top 10 ended up being more of a top 20, which I'm perfectly fine with, because that documentary is deserving of more than just a top 10. So
Yeah, if you haven't seen the documentary, if you purchase the film, whether digital or physical, check out this documentary.
Yeah.
The Skywalker Legacy. It's awesome, and it will only enhance your appreciation for the film.
Agreed. You ready to wrap up this week's episode, Josh?
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
I'm just glad you're here. At the end.
Okay, thank you all again for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed episode 22. We hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed talking through it. If you're watching live or listening some other way, make sure that you're subscribed to the show uh, so you get it in your podcatcher every week. We're on most major podcasters. If you're on iTunes or if you have iTunes on your computer, stop by and leave us a review. Every review helps get us out to more people, get more people listening to the show, more people involved in what we're doing. Check out the website from a certain point of view.com. We've had a couple blog articles this week, a new Guarding the Light and a new Canon Catch-Up. We've also been doing our Canon Catch. We've also been doing our book club. Got that one out finally. That's on Discord, the Discord server. We have a special section of the Discord server which is totally free, totally open if you want to join. The link for that will be in the show notes. Twitter is Certain POV Pod. Facebook, From a Certain Point of View. Email certainpovpod@gmail.com. And we are hosted by Anchor.fm, where if you check them out, they'll have links for all of our shows as well, everywhere you can find us. And you can also send us a 60-second voicemail if you have questions or want to get your opinion heard on the show. We would love to be able to play that for you. We have been live today recording on Facebook and on YouTube, and we want to thank everyone for hanging out. We've had a great turnout today. On Facebook, we had Travis Boyle hanging out with us. I'm going to try to catch everyone on YouTube because YouTube was hopping today. But we had Mr. Rez, we had Roar Farm Boy, we had Jeffrey Fishbach. We had Followers of the Force. We had the 2Med2 Star Wars Network, Stuart Lugsden, a Jedi Fangirl. And I hope I got everyone there. And if I didn't, I sincerely apologize. But thank you so much for hanging out with us today. We really appreciate it. And you can find me doing other stuff on the internet on Twitter at thegauze85. Josh, I know you've had some other stuff going on this week. Tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me writing articles on Movie Newsnet, and you may even see an article or two that I write for Star Wars Newsnet, possibly in the coming in the near future. And you can find me at Jedi Jar Jar 1722 on Twitter. And thank you for joining us. As Adam said this morning, we're so glad to have you guys out there watching and listening. Thank you for supporting this podcast. And we love doing this, and we hope you love it too. And everything we said today was true.
From a certain point of view. Okay. Yeah, we're still live. We're just going to hang out for a few more minutes before I wrap up here.
Yeah, so I got an email from the Val, who is the kind of he runs Star Wars Newsnet and Movie Newsnet and everything.
Okay.
And he asked if some of us who are writing for Movie Newsnet would want to also write for Star Wars Newsnet, since things have been a little bit slow recently with news and everything. And I threw my name. I was like, yeah, I'll do
man.
it. And
Heck
so,
yeah, man. You're gonna
so I'm now
get
on the
us
list
some.
to.
You're gonna get us some scoops here soon.
Right. So I might have some scoops and be able to do some articles on there as well now.
You're gonna get us a.
To tell you about that.
You're gonna get us an interview with Daisy Ridley, right?
Yeah, well, that'd be something.
I don't think I could do it. I would lock up. I'd be like, Daisy.
Yeah, I would definitely have to prepare for that one quite a bit.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. So yeah, I don't. One thing I was wondering was happening today was the sound, and this has happened before, but like sometimes the sound cuts out. So like
it might just be you, because I think so.
Okay.
You mean like when I'm talking?
Yeah, like when you're talking or when the transition music is playing. So sometimes it cuts out. And
I think
I don't know what to do about that.
No, I think it's me, because I'm using a program called Voice Meter, and it's like a digital mixer that's a software mixer, and I think I just have the noise gate set up too harsh. So.
Okay, yeah, because you just cut out like 4 times just now.
Should...
Actually, it happened again.
Okay, yeah. So if you didn't hear any of that, I have a software mixer that I have the noise gate set too high, and I think I'm just not talking quite loud enough for it to kick in.
Okay.
But that should only be you hearing that because the stream and the podcast both get my actual mic audio. So
Okay.
you're
Gotcha.
you're just getting a little bit of a different one so that you can hear my desktop audio also.
All right. Cool. So yeah, sometimes if I'm not sure like what exactly you said, or if I'm a little late after
Okay.
the transition music, that's why, because
Well, I
something cut out.
usually, yeah, when I go back and do the podcast, like I still edit it down and I'll cut out like any pauses or
Okay.
uh, any big errors or stuff like that. So I don't just put it on like it is. So cool.
Gotcha.
And
By the way, did you get?
Mr. Rez is saying that sound is good on their end, so I'll mess with it a
Okay.
little bit so that you can. RFB is saying the same. And so is 2Med too. All right, so the sound is good for the podcast and for the live stream, but I'll mess with it so
Right.
it's better for you next time.
It's just cutting out for me.
Yeah, I'll make sure next time I'll make sure it's not doing that for you.
Okay. The other thing I was going to ask you was, did you get your tickets for the Return of
Yeah,
the
I
Jedi
did,
thing?
and I'm a little worried about that. So everyone in live chat, we got tickets. Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra is having a live screening of Return of the Jedi with the orchestra, and that is the end of June.
June 26th.
Okay, so I'm hoping we're good for that.
Yeah, I hope
That's
we still
still
get to go to that.
that's still like 3 months away. So I hope
Yeah,
we're
so
good.
God, I would hope by then we'll be back to normal kind of.
Yeah, but I did get my tickets. They're pretty quick.
Yeah, it was fast.
I
It was
got
quicker
them
than I
just like
expected.
2 or 3 days after I ordered, and I ordered it on Saturday, I think. So
Yeah, it was fast.
it was.
Yeah, well, hey, I think that's everything.
Yeah.
I might go play some Resident Evil 2 remastered for
You started
PS4
talking
here.
about that.
Yeah.
I never got into Resident Evil. I couldn't do it.
Okay. Yeah, I love all those survival horror games like Silent Hill I played and Resident Evil. I love The Last of Us. The Last of Us is probably one of my favorite games.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I don't know. I never really got into any of
mhm.
the zombie games. The thing I didn't like about Resident Evil was the camera. And I know that that wasn't the way in all the games, but at least for the first one, I could never get past how it was like a fixed camera, and then you were walking through like I hated that. Hated it.
Yeah, it makes the combat and everything a little challenging. I
Yeah.
think with the updated version, it's a little bit better.
Yeah. But I'm also a wussy when it comes to horror. So
Yeah. Well, I do have to play during like the daylight hours, so
yeah.
that helps.
Yeah, I can't do horror like that. So um
You got anything going on this weekend?
no, not really. We're not under a mandatory stay at home yet. In our county anyway, for everyone looking at watching this live. So I don't know. My mom and dad were wanting to have a dinner tomorrow, like just a family, and not very many people, just like me and the wife and daughter. So
Uh-huh.
I'm tossing up on whether I should go to that or not. So, but I don't know. We'll see.
Cool.
Probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think Brittany's Aunt Marge, who's watching Sydney right now, is gonna bring her back here a little bit later, and then we were gonna make some food or something like that. So
Okay. Sounds good. The rest of today, I don't have any. I think we have to get some groceries. But we should be good for another week. So
you have to what?
we have to get some groceries.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Not a whole lot, but just a little bit. We're pretty good for the rest of the week. Let me. While you're sitting here, I can mess with this right now. All right, is that any better? Is that cut out still? La 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 la.
Not experiencing any cutout yet.
All right, well we'll keep it there. We'll see what happens. All right.
Okay.
So yeah, you gotta get a little bit of. Why is YouTube holding comments for review? Mr. S says, may the force be with you, and YouTube is holding that for review. Weird. Anyway.
Yeah, actually, you were still cutting out a little bit.
All right. I can take it down even more. All right. All right. Well, I think I'm about ready to wrap it for today.
Sounds good to me, man. Have a fantastic weekend. It was
Yeah,
a
you
pleasure
too.
recording with you once
Same,
again, talking
same.
Star Wars. And
Same.
all right,
Thanks everyone for
I will
hanging out
talk to
in
you
live
soon.
chat. We
Yeah.
appreciate it. And we'll see you
Thank you
next
guys out
week.
there. Everybody stay safe and healthy, and
Yeah.
have a good week.
I've been thinking about doing a little hangout on YouTube later this week. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Sounds good.
I do like YouTube's working really well. So.
Mm-hmm.
All
right, man. Have a good one.
Later.
See you later.
See you later. Later, everyone.